Oh, right. Yeah.
Uh, Got somebody online with they're unmuted. Um, Thanks for coming. My name is Mark Personius. I'm the Whatcom County. We'll keep this going while we try to work out the technological glitches. Um, The draft EIS is the subject of our public hearing tonight. This is an opportunity. We'll keep this going while we try to work out the technological glitches. Um, The draft EIS is the subject of our public hearing tonight. This is an opportunity. Technological glitches. Um, The draft EIS is the subject of our public hearing tonight. This is an opportunity. Technological glitches. The draft EIS is the subject of our public hearing tonight. This is an opportunity. Give us a testing. Oh, I didn't hear any feedback on that one. I think we're good. Do we think we're good? Okay. Where was I? So opportunity tonight to comment verbally. We're going to have a presentation from SCJ, who's our consultants who prepared the draft EIS. We'll have a slideshow for you, and Bill Grimes and Sharice Graham will make that presentation for you. And then following that, we'll have opportunity for you guys to comment on the record. And that's really what this is, opportunity is about. Bill and Sharice will talk a little bit more as a part of their presentation about the schedule and the process, but this is the draft EIS about alternative growth scenarios and potential impacts out of the for the 2025 comprehensive plan updates for the county and the cities. And so after that, there will be comments provided both written and verbally tonight. And then the final EIS will be prepared later this year that will address the comments that we hear from folks and as well as identify what is a preferred alternative growth scenario for each of the jurisdictions that are planning under the GMA in the county. So that's the 7 cities and the county. So with that, I am going to introduce Bill Grimes to come up and start the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark. Can we get the presentation going? All right, thank you. So, how shall I cue you for the slide? Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is SEPA, State Environmental Policy Act? Every time a jurisdiction in the state of Washington undertakes a policy or a project decision, they have to take a look at the State Environmental Policy Act and see if there's going to be a reasonable environmental impact or reasonable chance for an environmental impact to occur. In this case, since we're looking at policies and a plan, it is called a non-project SEPA action. So it's not like a development project per se. It's really more about the potential implications of policy adoption. It's something that we need to do. Every jurisdiction has to do this in the state of Washington, and we're one of the crowd. Whatcom County has prepared EISs for its comprehensive plan updates over the decades. And so this is a continuation of that series. So if you're interested in seeing what the history looks like, you can take a gander at the 2016 Comprehensive Plan EIS for that historical perspective. Comparing the two documents might be pretty interesting because there are new environmental requirements that we had to incorporate in this document. So ours this time is a little bit more voluminous and detailed than the one you had a decade ago. Back in January, the county issued a determination of significance, which is a step to kick off the EIS preparation process. And that DS also called for a public hearing where community members had an opportunity to take a look at what the proposals may be for the comprehensive plan update, and then weigh in on the topics that the EIS, Environmental Impact Statement, should consider. So we received 18 comments. Let's see, we got 18 that were yes, received mailed in during the comment period, and we had 3 during the scoping session, which is a meeting similar to this one. Based on that and our own analysis of the existing conditions and environmental opportunities, we came up with this list of scoping items to guide the breadth of the EIS policy examination. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand that over to Charisse, who is the principal author of the EIS.
Thanks, Bill. Good evening, everyone. So as Bill said, the first step in the SEPA process is the scoping, where we determine what would be included in the EIS itself. The next step is to determine the alternatives. So Chapter 2 of the EIS describes what those alternatives are. And per the requirements of SEPA, we have to include a no action alternative, which is the scenario based on not changing the current comp plan and development regulations. And then we also had 3 what we call action alternatives. The first one was a medium growth option. The second one was the multi-jurisdictional resolution is what we called it. We like to have long names, which was the preferred UGA and zoning changes by all of the jurisdictions. And it has kind of a medium growth allocation. And then alternative 3 was the high growth scenario. And these action alternatives represent a range of development scenarios for the whole 20-year planning period. This is just another breakdown of the alternatives to give you an idea of what that growth range is that we were looking at. And it shows the population, employment, housing, growth that's allocated under each of those alternatives, and then proposed UGA and zoning changes. Now, I apologize, I'm going to go through this really quickly because we don't have a whole lot of time, but we're happy to answer questions afterwards. This slide shows the breakdown of those population allocations by alternative for the rural unincorporated areas versus the incorporated and UGA areas for each of the jurisdictions. So just for example, under alternative 1, medium growth, the 81% of the population allocation would go to the cities and their UGAs, and 19% would go to the unincorporated rural areas. Chapter 3 in the draft EIS is the suitability analysis. And the suitability analysis evaluates those criteria listed there to help determine appropriate locations for urban growth. So the jurisdictions are using this to help determine where UGA boundaries need to be adjusted or if they need to be adjusted. And we also looked at UGA reserve areas and other areas adjacent to the current boundaries that might be appropriate for future growth. This is largely a GIS and mapping exercise to identify where the study areas that we looked at overlay with those resources. It provides consideration for how to address the overlapping areas and whether policy or boundary changes need to be proposed. This is an overview map of the study area that we looked at. And we'll look at some kind of closer in views of some of these areas. But it shows kind of the full breadth of what we were looking at. So this is the area around Bellingham. Bellingham is in this area, there are several although the study areas, sorry, let me back up. So the study areas here are shown in red and are numbered, and then the corresponding number is in the green on the table, in the table next to it. And this is the same for all of the following maps. And there's an explanation in the table of what is proposed for each of those study areas. For Bellingham, this alternative 2, which is the multi-jurisdictional resolution alternative, proposes to add areas 4 and 7 to the UGA. And others, the rest of the study areas may be removed from the UGA or moved to the reserve, and potentially downzone. All of the additions are proposed to accommodate both housing and jobs. And in alternative 3, the high growth option, they're proposing to add the UGA areas, but not remove the others. And again, that's needed to accommodate the growth. Birch Bay, there are no UGA expansions or removals proposed for this area. In Blaine, Blaine currently has the capacity to accommodate the projected growth in their UGAs, but they are proposing some changes. They are proposing to remove Area 1 from the city boundaries, remove Area 2 from the UGA, and add Areas 3 and 4 to the UGA reserve. Basically, they are proposing a UGA swap so that they can add areas that are more suitable for development and remove areas that have more critical areas and areas that are not suitable for development. Cherry Point. In alternative 2, we're proposing to remove Area 2 from the UGA due to the existence of critical areas there, again, not suitable for development. And the same in alternative 3, but also adding study area 1, which is that little bit down in the corner. For the Columbia Valley UGA, it proposes to remove area 1 from the UGA reserve, and this is also due to the presence of critical areas. Everson, for all 3 of the action alternatives, we're proposing to add study areas 1 through 5 to accommodate both housing and jobs, and to remove study areas 6 through 8 due to the presence of critical areas and other areas not suitable for development. For Ferndale, they propose to add study areas 6 through 7 from the reserve into the UGA to meet their jobs needs. So these are areas that are mostly commercial and industrial already. And they're proposing to add areas 1 through 5 to the reserve. They do have a lot of critical areas in the existing UGA, so they're hoping to add areas that can accommodate that growth. In Linden, where they're proposing to add just for alternative 3, which is the high growth option, they're proposing to add study areas 2 and 3 to the UGA. And some of these areas do have current ag lands, designated ag lands, but they would be required to mitigate for those potential impacts as development occurs. And Nooksack, They are proposing to add study areas 4 and 7 through 9 to the UGA and add study area 3 from the reserve to the UGA. And this is in particular required to accommodate the growth projected for this area outside of the floodplain, because they have so many floodplains now in areas within the UGA and the city. And finally, in Sumas for alternative 1, actually for all 3 alternatives, they're proposing to remove study area 5 due to critical areas, but also add study areas 2 through 4 and 6 through 9, or 6, yeah, 6 through 9, to accommodate both housing and jobs. And there's also the potential to add study area 10 to the reserve in alternative 2 and alternative 3. And I know this is a whole lot of numbers I'm throwing out at you, but we can certainly go through it afterwards. The expansion areas, the areas proposed for expansion of the UGA would rezone where there are floodplains within those areas. They would be rezoned to open space and agriculture to protect those areas from development. And then finally, the next step in the SEPA process is to actually do the impact analysis and propose mitigation strategies. The rest of the EIS deals with the existing conditions that we find in the county, the types of impacts that would be expected with implementation of any of the alternatives, and those mitigation strategies. And one thing to really note is this is a planning level evaluation. It takes place at a very high level to look at the potential effects of these development scenarios over a 20-year planning period. So the impacts we identify and would expect to happen kind of incrementally over time. The mitigation proposed likewise are strategies and plans that influence the way development happens, and also would be implemented just over time as that need arises. The chapter 4 of the EIS is the impacts section. 4.1 is earth, and this section identifies what the existing conditions are for natural hazards, naturally occurring asbestos, soil suitability, things like that. Impacts identified have specifically to do with development and how development changes the landscape. The mitigation proposed is mainly complying with existing regulations. And you find that's really the case for a lot of the impacts identified at this planning level. We have regulations such as the Critical Areas Code, the Shoreline Master Program, and zoning codes in place to help direct and offset those potential impacts. And compliance with those codes really does most of the mitigation for us. Other mitigation might be to redirect more growth to the cities and the UGAs versus the rural resource areas, and limit UGA expansion in areas with natural hazards. Section 4.2 is air quality and climate. The most common pollutant for air quality in Whatcom County is PM2, it's called PM 2.5. It's particulate matter, comes from smoke, dust, vehicle exhaust, ozone. One of the resources identified smoke and heat vulnerability, especially in areas around Bellingham, Columbia Valley, Ferndale, and Lumi Reservation as being susceptible to air quality concerns. Wildfire hazards have also been identified in areas around the county. mitigation other than the development regulations, complying with development regulations, there are several strategies identified in the Whatcom 2022 greenhouse gas emissions, some of these other planning efforts that have happened that can really help guide how and where development happens. For water resources, we took a look at both groundwater, surface water, aquifers, protection areas such as critical aquifer recharge areas, wellhead protection zones, and kind of overlaid that with the development options to see what areas would be potentially impacted. Again, most of the county's critical area ordinance regulations would avoid and minimize and mitigate impacts. Four point three is, 4.4 is plants and animals. Again, here we looked at kind of where the priority habitats are, what animals and special status plants are found in the county, and the likelihood of development impacting those habitats and having impacts on the resources. The wildlife habitats most likely to be lost would be forested and agriculture, pasture land, areas that haven't seen a lot of development previously. So mitigation, again, is compliance with critical areas code to prevent the loss of habitat and avoid expansion of UGAs where those habitat and species are found. Section 4.5 is land and shoreline use. This section looks at kind of the development patterns, the urban growth areas, resource lands, and how the different land uses are compatible with each other. As growth occurs and land develops or redevelops in greater intensities, these alternatives have the potential kind of to create those land use conflicts. So we took a look at kind of what's there, what's proposed, and identified some areas that could be at risk, such as loss of agriculture and forest lands and conflicts between residential and commercial, residential and industrial. And some of one of the mitigation strategies identified was to implement recommendations from the rural land study, which included heightened agricultural protection measures and using some of the existing programs such as purchase of development rights. Chapter 4.6 plans and policies is a review of the high level review of the consistency of the comprehensive plan and the development regulations update with local, regional, and state existing plans and policies. How well does the proposed comp plan comply with the Growth Management Act, countywide planning policies, and things like that? The mitigation for potential conflicts here would be additional UGA boundary adjustments, relocation of those population allocations, land use designation changes, and other programs to promote development in the patterns under the preferred alternative. Section 4.7 is population, housing, and employment. This section took a look at the current projected population, housing, and employment levels for the county planning, and then the projections for each of the alternatives. Using the existing or the population growth rate over the last planning period. as most of you probably are very aware, typical home values in Whatcom County have gone up over 200% in the last 10 years. And rental units have gone up between 23 and 50%. So the lack of affordable housing is real, and it's there. And the counties would be required to comply with current legislation that amends the Growth Management Act to require jurisdictions to plan for and accommodate affordable housing. So we took a hard look at how that can be done with these planning scenarios. Chapter 4.8 is environmental justice. This is a new one for the comprehensive planning process. It is a result of recent legislation for climate action planning. The GMA identifies a need to address environmental justice in land use and climate elements. So we used the department, in addition to census data, we used the Department of Health's environmental health disparities mapping tool to identify where vulnerable populations are in the county. And these are populations that, due to social and physical constraints, are more susceptible to or more vulnerable to environmental impacts. So things like wildfire, extreme heat, and smoke, climate change, transportation impacts, the mitigation strategies to help alleviate those disparities between populations are, include a lot of public outreach, making sure that people are aware of the planning process and can be part of that regardless of their situation in life, and making sure that we get all of that information out and make available to the whole community. Section 4.9 is cultural resources. These deal with archaeological, historical and cultural sites, districts, and building structures. The greatest impact to cultural resources is the risk of loss or damage to archaeological sites and historic structures. The county is working closely with the tribes and other organizations to make sure that that those resources are protected. Mitigation strategies definitely include compliance with the local, state, and federal protection laws. So anything federally funded goes through Section 106. State funded projects have their own process, and all those resources have to be disclosed and revealed or protected through those laws. Section 4.10 is transportation. This section kind of summarizes the key components of the existing system, the multimodal surface transportation system, the levels of service for that whole system, based on the population and projections for each of the alternatives. They took a look at whether or not those levels of service would still be met. There were a couple of areas that were identified that are of particular concern. Lakeway Drive from the East Bellingham city limit to the Geneva UGA is forecasted to exceed the adopted levels of service under all of the growth alternatives. So this is a definite issue. That one. And let's see, the other one was the SR 542 Mount Baker Highway. Although there are mitigation options that could definitely reduce that level of, or bring that into an acceptable level of service. The Lakeway Drive, however, although there are definitely options that can help alleviate it, the LOS is still at an unacceptable level. For 411, section 411 is public services. The section describes kind of the existing services available in the county, their current anticipated levels of service and potential impacts to their ability to provide services from the future growth. We looked at law enforcement, fire districts, school districts, and parks. The impacts from growth are somewhat obvious. As the population grows, there's more stress or more services demand for services within the county. Each of these districts has their own capital improvement planning process, and the mitigation strategies for these definitely relies heavily on planned projects and that planning process to provide staffing and facilities, and whether it's, schools or fire stations or equipment, as that need becomes evident. So as development happens, those planning processes, we rely on those planning process to identify those needs. And lastly, section 412, utilities. It's a very similar situation where we identified the existing water, sewer, solid waste, and other utility, electric and natural gas facilities within the county, and identify those areas that might see the most demand for those services. Again, each of those services have their own planning process that we would rely on to identify needs as development happens over time. In the conclusions of the kind of high level conclusions of the EIS impact analysis are, there were only one significant unavoidable adverse impact identified, and all other impacts identified through the process would be mitigated through those identified strategies. But the one of unavoidable impact would be the traffic congestion identified at Lakeway Drive. So the rest of the EIS process, as Mark talked about a bit, is to complete this public comment period. We'll be reviewing all of the comments received. We will then start preparation of the final EIS, where we respond to every comment received. We'll take all of those into consideration, work with the team, and the county and the local jurisdictions will use that information to help draft the final preferred alternative. And that's what will be analyzed in the final EIS. And then hopefully adopted in the final EIS will be available in late summer, and then the comp plan and preferred alternative will be adopted in late this year. And just to reiterate that we definitely want everybody's input. It's important to have input from the public and hear your comments. And you can see the email address and the website here. All comments need to be in by June 1st. Yes, June 1st. With that, does anybody have any questions about the process itself? Thank you.
Thanks, Sharice.
So we're going to begin the public hearing process. Just a few reminders. We are being broadcasted live and the audio is being recorded and will be uploaded to our county website. As noted on our website, members of the public may watch the meeting or join online or by phone. This public hearing is regarding the draft EIS only, so all other comments regarding the comp plan can be shared at either county council or county planning commission meetings in the future. Please state your full name for the record and direct all comments to the SEPA official Mark Personius and the consultant. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The screen timer will show when your 3-minute speaking time is up. If you would like to provide public comment on this topic, we will take comments from those in the room first, and I will call names as it appears on the sign-up sheet. If you are participating remotely and would like to speak, virtually raise your hand. We will get to you shortly. If you're using the internet, press the hand icon to raise your hand, and if you're calling in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. So we have 7 people signed up. I will call the first 3, Claire Walton, Kathleen Greenbaum, and Matt Connor. Oh, you could go around. Yes. And if you could state your name for the record, please.
Hi, my name's Claire Walton, and I'm a Birchwood resident. And I'm just here to hopefully just put forth, I'm not a public speaker, so I'll be awkward. But I also just, it's very important to me and the community around me that the area that the ABC Recycling was intending to buy and purchase, it's still considered heavy industry. And if that were moved even to light industry or not, you know, there's a light industry across the street that is very well adapted to the surrounding neighborhoods. It is very, like, the tax revenue is higher than the heavy industry in the surrounding neighborhoods. It's completely rented out. And it also is, you know, people walk around there with their strollers and their dogs, and everyone within that neighborhood, you know, is balanced and healthy, and the health of our community really, you know, is important. There's a school there. There are a lot of people that, even though it is a heavy industry area, it's also, there are a lot of people that live there. And so if we could avoid the next catastrophe by downzoning it to something very reasonable, like light industry, I think that that would avoid a lot of trauma in the neighborhood, and it would also benefit, you know, business, because trying to find that happy medium is really what we are trying to do as a whole group of people. Like, how do we serve, you know, the most people? And that's, you know, financially, health-wise, that Locust Beach area is extremely well frequented. The amount of times that the parking lot is completely full. You know, there's a lot of people use that area for recreation. And if you put something that's heavy industry in there, it's going to impact a lot of people's connection to nature. That's Bellingham is known for its connection to nature. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people move here. And that is one of the hot button places where, if, you know, people go there for a reason. I've seen 5 eagles just dance, you know, in that particular area. And I've been very blessed to live very close to there. And I feel very protective of the area, but I also understand that industry and growth happens. But there is a middle ground there that I think it would be very prudent to look at right now, rather than when everybody is scared and stressed and worried. So that's what I'm here to hopefully, you know, put forth support for. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Kathleen Greenbaum. I don't see her. Matt Connor. Please state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Matt Connor. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'd like to start by thanking the council for their work on this comp plan update and all of the consultants that have worked really hard on putting this together. I recognize how much work this has been for all of you, so thank you very much. I've had the opportunity to review the draft EIS, and I believe that alternative 2 is the appropriate alternative. And I'd urge the council and the consultants to support that and adopt it as the preferred alternative. I think the first thing that I'd say about it is that alternative 2 is basically adopts the multi-jurisdictional resolution. All of the cities in the county worked really hard on putting that together. It was the result of a negotiated compromise on that. It's what all the jurisdictions want. I think it'd be a shame to let all of that work go to waste. The alternative 2 also selects sort of a middle of the road growth rate. It's not too high, it's not too low. And I think it's what the cities and the county anticipate will actually occur in the upcoming planning period. And so I think that's a really good balance. Alternative 2 also allocates the way the growth, I think the growth, the way the cities and the county want the growth to be allocated. And when the multi-jurisdictional resolution was negotiated, the cities indicated where and how each wanted to grow. And I think that alternative 2 does the best job of supporting those intentions. The other thing that alternative 2 does is I think that it allocates the least growth to the rural areas. The GMA requires the majority of the county's growth rate to be directed towards urban areas and away from rural areas and other non-urban areas. And so I think the alternative 2 does the best job of protecting rural agricultural, forestry, and natural resources and other environmentally sensitive areas that should be avoided if possible. And so it's always a job of balancing those competing interests. And I think that whether we want Whatcom County to grow or not, that's kind of a reality that's happening. And I think that alternative 2 does sort of the best job of managing that balance. So thank you for your time.
Derek Buse.
My name's Derek Busey. I'm at Samish Lane in the county. I wanted to firstly start off by saying thank you to the council for their efforts on the comp plan update. I know there's a lot of work to be done, but it's a significant milestone just to get here and just really appreciate everyone's hard work getting us to this point. I've read through the draft EIS and I believe that alternative 2 is the appropriate option. I strongly urge the council to adopt alternative 2 as the preferred decision. A couple reasons why. Alternative 2 allocates the highest percentage of growth to the city of Bellingham. Bellingham is the largest urban area. It has the most services, it has the most infrastructure, has the largest population, and it makes sense that it should be where the highest percentage of growth is located. Alternative 2 also removes the potential for growth from the Lake Whatcom watershed. At present, the city of Bellingham's urban growth area contains Hillsdale UGA and the Geneva UGA. Both are in the Lake Whatcom watershed. Alternative 2 proposes to remove those 2 UGAs, the Hillsdale and the Geneva, from the urban growth area and redesignate them to the urban growth reserve. Alternative 2 partially addresses the transportation problem on Lakeway Drive. There are a few transportation problems in Whatcom County, but Lakeway Drive is definitely one of them. By removing the Geneva UGA from the urban growth area status and redesignating each the urban growth area reserve, the additional urban growth would occur and the Geneva is relocated to other areas. This does not solve the transportation problem on Lakeway Drive, but it does not contribute to making it worse. So in conclusion, and for the reasons I stated, I respectfully request the council to select alternative 2 as its preferred option. And I'm grateful for the chance to be able to speak in front of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Peter Frazier.
Good evening. My name is Peter Frazier. I'm here to support the inclusion of the South U Street UGA in the preferred alternative of the comprehensive plan, either alternative 2 or 3. This is a necessary and strategic location for urban growth in Whatcom County. It's adjacent to city utilities, parks, and schools, and it holds the key to unlocking the largest undeveloped residential parcels inside Bellingham's city limits, including Samish Heights. It's near where people work, and it's one of the last realistic areas where compact growth can still be planned. We're in a housing crisis. Bellingham is one of the least affordable cities in the nation, and we're short on housing for professionals, the very people we need to sustain our economy, educators, engineers, nurses, and the workers who support advanced manufacturing, clean tech, and other family wage sectors. Without this kind of housing, we've already seen employers pass us by. That's a red flag. We need robust economic development and the housing to support it so we can build the tax base to pay for our community investments in behavioral health, affordable housing, schools, new criminal justice infrastructure, parks, and early childhood education and child care. South U Street UGA is where we can plan smart. We can apply both residential, single, and multifamily zoning, include middle housing forms, integrate small-scale commercial and trails. We can connect people to jobs, schools, and green space, especially through a trail and habitat corridor from Lake Padden to Whatcom Creek. This is a chance to build walkable, transit-oriented neighborhoods, not just subdivisions. There's been concern about environmental impacts, particularly around Lake Padden, but these lands are already bounded by development. With modern standards for stormwater, tree retention, green infrastructure, we can actually improve watershed health. And by extending sewer, we can eliminate hundreds of aging septic systems, a real gain for water quality and climate resilience. Finally, I urge the county to include updated land capacity analysis in the final EIS and to incorporate input from property owners. We need to know just how many potential units could be built with inclusion of the South U Street UGA. The document says 200 plus, but with dense housing forms and the largest undeveloped properties inside the city limits unlocked, there are literally thousands of people who could be housed in these neighborhoods. Please adopt alternative 2 or 3 and include the South U Street UGA. This is our best opportunity to meet the moment with smart housing, environmental stewardship, and a stronger economic future. I will submit my full comments by the deadline. Thank you.
Thank you. Eddie Yuri.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eddie Yuri, here representing your local sustainability, education, and advocacy nonprofit Resources. It's kind of strange to speak with my back facing everyone in the room. So I hope someone's watching the live stream at least. I just first I just want to thank everyone for all the good work that's reflected in this document, 439 pages. Just appreciate all that you're doing with limited resources and time and staff and constraining priorities and projects and all these things overlapping at the same time. I'm going to admit I haven't read a lot of it. We're still working on our written comments and we'll be submitting, of course, by June 1st. But we would respectfully request an extension of this deadline, just to give all this the amount of attention and time it deserves for members of the general public to be able to contribute to making a stronger informational document. As I understand it, right, these alternatives are there for comparison. Whatever decision the council ultimately makes on growth allocations will likely be some kind of hybrid of the alternatives, right? Wherever we can put as much in, just acknowledge impacts. I'm going to talk about some specific areas here. looking to it was pages 3-5, section 3.2.3. It's really nice to see some recognition of the future shorelines project that is ongoing, and linking to that ArcGIS map and reviewing that was really interesting. I understand that there's a report that's going to come out as soon as next month on that, though after this comment period's over. And we are, looking through the, UGA maps and the list of, impacts and mitigations, and just overall growth allocations. It doesn't really seem that flood risk based on historic data, nor on the modeling for the, increased, what I think was 75% in 50 years, it increased floodplain area, the 100-year flood zone, not really just seeing that reflected so much in, it will be nice to see acknowledged as like significant unavoidable adverse impacts perhaps, or more mitigating conditions for this, because we are seeing a lot of like growth directed and concentrated in areas that we know are going to get flooded. And there's just some questions around how can we be most responsible when we can reasonably foresee certain impacts. So, I mean, likewise, I think it would be great if we could see updated data and insights from the rural land study incorporated into this. There's a lot of time, I think, before you can come out with the final EIS. A lot of time left in this comp plan process, and these things are happening concurrently. So, yeah, we hope you're able to take that into account. And thank you.
Thank you. And Bill Geyer.
Good evening. My name is Bill Geyer, Geyer and Associates, and here to speak to a specific component. I believe there's a deficiency in the DEIS that's related to affordable housing. Specifically, I'm addressing those households that are 60% or 80% of the average median income. Although in section 2.2.2, you make identification of in alternatives 1, 2, and 3 for implementation for HB 1220 and HB 1110. And also you cite in section 4.6.1 the existing conditions of the GMA housing goal, the planning policies, and the comp plan that provide textual components supporting affordable housing. And then in the mitigation component, 4.7.4, you identified in the DEIS that the county will comply with HB 1220 and HB 1337. However, in looking at alternatives 1, 2, and 3, you fail to complete that analysis to then go to a policy consideration, if not more specific, as to where that could be accomplished. One statement was, I think, not very correct in section 4.7.5, where it says on page 4-125, I quote, "No significant unavoidable adverse impacts to population, housing, and employment are anticipated with implementation of any of these actions." I think that's an incorrect statement. The reason being, as I've previously provided to the Planning Commission, there are areas that the county has identified as a rural designation and has relegated significant properties to a non-conforming status. And it's particularly impactful on low income and even lower income families, because with a non-conforming status, they either A, are cut off from some of the components that you can achieve in other designations, such as the UR4 designations in the county. But most importantly, it even adds additional cost to their ability to finance their home, either for permanent acquisition or for rehab, because non-conforming status units are given different reviewing by FDIC appraisers and underwriters. It results in a higher mortgage cost. I identified an area of about 120 acres near Blaine Road and Lincoln Road that this exact situation is occurring today. I think, and I also identified an adjoining site where the property owner has committed to in development of her property, if included in the UGA, will develop all of the property for affordable housing for either the 60 or 80% AMI, as I cited at the beginning. So I think the DEIS should address how affordable housing is actually going to be implemented for the upcoming comp plan decisions, rather than just giving the narrative and the general description that is in the current DEIS. Failing to do so really will not complete the implementation that the county has said they wish to achieve for HB 1220, 1110, and 1337, and I'll submit additional comments prior to the June 1st deadline. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all that we have signed up. Is there anyone in the room that hasn't signed up that wishes to speak at this time? Okay. Seeing none, we are going to move to our online. Um, let's see. We have 3 attendees. We're going to start with just going down the list. We have Darcy Jones. Thank you.
Hi, this is Darcy Jones with Jones Engineers. Again, thank you.
Darcy Jones, go ahead and speak. Oops,
Hi, this is Darcy Jones with Jones Engineers. I'm addressing you tonight on behalf of Kitech Kitech USA, the primary property owner within the North Bellingham UGA Reserve. We recognize and appreciate that scope of the DEIS includes alternatives which incorporate the properties within the North Bellingham UGA Reserve as stakeholders. We support a growth strategy wherein each jurisdiction anticipates and plans for more than the statistically most likely medium population projection. It's not realistic to assume that each city and UGA will accommodate an allocated share of the medium projection in a perfect statistical manner over the next 20 years. Whereas alternative 2 anticipates a population projection and allocation strategy, which provides for responsible, flexible, and contingencies in the land use and infrastructure plans to ensure they remain responsive and sustainable through periods of shifting demographic patterns, evolving environmental regulations, and other factors which will emerge in Whatcom County over the next 20 years. The DEIS clearly establishes alternative 2 is the superior option to achieve the best results associated with each of the key issues being analyzed in the DEIS. The most significant difference between alternative 2 and each of the other alternatives is that alternative 2 is anticipated to result in 13% of countywide population growth to occur in the unincorporated rural areas, whereas each of the other alternatives would result in 19% of countywide population growth in the unincorporated rural areas. Alternative 2 will provide the best outcome for housing. For example, Alternative 2 proposes a reconfiguration of Bellingham's urban growth area to exclude areas which are not suitable for urban levels of development and replacing those with other more efficiently buildable lands. And this growth strategy will increase the potential for a true variety of housing options to complement Bellingham's infill strategies. And providing this variety for housing will have the effect to limit the potential for sprawl. The DEIS established that some of the most expensive capital facility and infrastructure investment challenges in Bellingham are existing deficiencies, exist today, and are required to be mitigated under all of the alternatives. The need for a new water reservoir storage at King Mountain and a new fire station are 2 examples. And the growth strategy established in Alternative 2 will result in a more efficient cost recovery of city investments for those needed capital facilities, as system charges and fees associated with new housing will be realized in a more timely and consistent manner. Alternative 2 of the DIS specifically incorporates conclusion of the North Bellingham UGA Reserve, and inclusion of this land and subsequent annexation is an integral element of the city's growth strategy embodied in the multi-jurisdictional resolution adopted by the County Council last month. We emphasize that each of the individual elements of Alternative 2's growth strategy are critical for the overall strategy to be successful, and we emphasize that these mitigation measures recommended must be achieved in order to be successful. And some of those most critical mitigation elements have to do with recommendations and assumptions for infrastructure improvement. We have found several inconsistencies within the DEIS related to capital facility issues, including lack of consistency between the city's draft water system plan and the growth alternatives 2 and 3. We also find inconsistencies within the document between the water service areas referenced in the text versus the maps. We also find inconsistencies. We also find inconsistencies within the document between the water.
Darcy, thank you. This is Mark Personius. We're having some technical difficulties here with the online testimony. So thank you for that. Just want to remind everybody who does testify online, we're having some audio issues. Just to also remind you to please, we will have a recording of it, but please also plan on submitting your written comments by June 1st, just so we make sure we've got you covered on the record. Okay.
So next we have Perry Eskridge.
Good evening. This is Perry Eskridge on behalf of the Whatcom County Association of Realtors, and I also represent Building Industry Association of Whatcom County, although I'm not speaking for them specifically tonight. The general comments I have tonight, given the time limitation, are after reading the entirety of the EIS and studying it, I recognize that, well, I guess the best way to sum it up is I'm underwhelmed by the level of analysis that I read. If I had to give an executive summary of this document, basically it would be all the alternatives have impacts. State law allows us to mitigate for all of them except for Lakeway Drive, and alternative 2 is clearly the best. I think that just sums up about all 500 pages. I also noticed that at the coordinating council this afternoon, Michael Lilliquist, council member for the city of Bellingham, hit on, I think, what is a lot of our concerns, but sort of in a roundabout way. Specifically, he asked, where are the development and allocations in the critical areas? Where's the analysis that's going to help us decide or inform which alternative is best? And that's kind of where I'm getting. When I read the analysis, there's a page in there that goes to great detail about all of these individual plans that exist that were available to guide the EIS and help perform these analyses. But a lot of those plans from the date that they were cited have changed. And Darcy Jones, in his prior testimony, touched on one of these, and it's the water plan for Bellingham. If you look at the current draft 20-year water plan for Bellingham, you realize that alternative 2 and 3 are not even contemplated in that plan. And in fact, if you were to go to the existing parks plan and look at recent park acquisitions, you're going to realize that a lot of the plans that water plan rely on are no longer possible because of the existence of dedicated parks, which makes us believe that inclusion of the South U Street area is a good idea, but you're not going to get nearly the housing there, which means you're going to end up with a lot more impacts in the city if they're not taking the growth. It's going to go somewhere else, and those unplanned, sprawl is going to result in situations that were not contemplated, might not be able to be mitigated. And it just seems to me that we've really got the cart before the horse here. And as a result, the EIS is deficient, I think, in a very significant way.
Thank you for your comment. Next, we have Jacqueline Sterno.
Hello, Jacqueline Sterna, Senior Municipal Liaison Manager for Puget Sound Energy, representing the Northern Territory of Island, Skagit, and Whatcom counties. I'd like to thank Whatcom County for the opportunity to provide comment tonight on the draft environmental impact statement and the 4 growth alternatives on the comp plan update. Puget Sound Energy remains neutral on which growth alternative will be selected. However, the utility does have a fundamental obligation to serve and to meet our customers' energy demands throughout the entire service territory. So for our purposes tonight, our primary interest lies in maintaining an open and continuous dialogue with the county about planned growth areas and development patterns. And we find that ongoing communication is essential as both the county and the utility plan develop and build out our grid infrastructure to support our customers, your constituents, our ratepayers, and meet the needs of Whatcom County. I would like to remind you that Puget Sound Energy does not build on spec, and we look forward to continued collaboration throughout the comprehensive plan update. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brian Estes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
this is Brian Estes. I'm a resident of North Cordata. I live just below the North Bellingham UGA Reserve, and I strongly support alternative 2, or perhaps a blending a little bit of alternative 2 and 3, but to definitely allow the North Bellingham UGA Reserve, which is 339 acres and would accommodate at least 1,000 additional housing units. And this could and should include a number of multiplex units, such as the duplexes that are already in my neighborhood, including my own. This would offer a mix of housing types to cater to various income levels. Generally, in this area, we want a much more walkable neighborhood with retail nearby and many other trails and parks in Cordata, which has long been neglected by the city of Bellingham. The new Cordata Park is a great addition. It does have some trails within it, but most of the trails in Bellingham, in the Cordata neighborhood of Bellingham, don't really go anywhere. And I think with 339 acres there, we have some opportunities to create some great recreational spaces, neighborhood type walkable retail, and in many other areas, we could create a little mini town center, for example, up here in North Bellingham. So for those reasons, I would strongly recommend endorsement of the second alternative, and definitely look forward to additional homes being developed in the North Bellingham area to meet our housing affordability crisis. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all the hard work that's gone into this plan. Although I will second what several speakers have mentioned, is that the um, infrastructure and requirements for the water system by the city of Bellingham is wholly inadequate. And that really needs to be looked at in great detail, because there's just a lot of misinformation and inaccuracies in that plan. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that is viewing in online wish to speak at this time? Darcy Jones.
Hi, this is Darcy Jones, and I hope you all can hear me okay. I'm contacting you regarding the North Bellingham Urban Growth Area Reserve owned by Kitech USA. They're the largest landowner in that area. Some of the comments since I first spoke have really come through, and I appreciate that. We support alternative 2 for a variety of reasons. The draft EIS has established that alternative 2 would result in a growth in the unincorporated county of expected 13%, where all the other alternatives would result in a 19% increase. We support a growth strategy where each jurisdiction anticipates and plans for just a little more than what is statistically the most likely medium projection. It's not realistic to assume that each city in UGA will accommodate or allocate a perfect medium projection over the next 20 years. Alternative 2 anticipates a growth projection which provides responsible flexibility and contingency in the land use and infrastructure plans to ensure they remain responsive and sustainable through periods of shifting demographic patterns, evolving environmental regulations, and other factors which will emerge in Whatcom County over the next 20 years. The best outcome for housing is found in Alternative 2. Alternative 2 provides a variety of housing with a reconfiguration, for example, in Bellingham's urban growth area, to exclude some areas which really aren't suitable for urban levels of development, and replacing those areas with other more efficiently developed lands. This growth strategy will increase the potential for a true variety of housing options to complement Bellingham's infill strategies, and providing this variety will have the effect to limit the potential for sprawl. And the DIS establishes some of the most expensive capital facilities and infrastructure investment challenges, especially in Bellingham, or there are existing deficiencies which are required as mitigation under all of the alternatives. Adoption of Alternative 2 and efficient use of our buildable lands will create housing and help generate fees to provide an efficient return on investment for the city.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else joining online that wishes to speak at this time? Seeing no other hands raised, Mark.
Thank you, everybody. That'll conclude tonight's hearing, and we appreciate your input and your comments, and appreciate you coming out and thinking about your future growth. So thank you. Good night.
What a shit show.
Well, I don't know. You're probably Thanks, you guys.